New slang going around, stay woke. Anybody else seen that? Stay woke. Which means to be aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. And this came out of my search in the dictionary, this quote from Barbara Lee. But we will only succeed if we reject the growing pressure to retreat into cynicism and hopelessness. We have a moral obligation to stay woke, take a stand, and be active, challenging injustices and racism in our communities and fighting hatred and discrimination wherever it rises. So stay woke. Of course, all of us metaphysicians, we have so many layers of being awake, right? Like we know what we mean by being awake. So there's so many layers, but I love what's happening now. This is a few awakening quotes from the Bible. Matthew. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Just a little one-liner. Keep awake. You know neither the day nor the hour. That was a quote from Jesus of Nazareth. One more. And what I say to you, I say to all. Keep awake. That's from Mark. Now I'm going to switch it up a little bit with a quote from a Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron. Use what seems like poison as medicine. Use your personal suffering as the path to compassion for all beings. In particular, to care about other people who are fearful, angry, jealous, overpowered, all kinds of people, okay? Care for arrogant, proud, miserly, selfish, mean, you name it. Have compassion and care for these people. This means not to run from the pain of finding these things in ourselves. In fact, one's whole attitude toward pain can change. Instead of fending it off and hiding from it, one could open one's heart and allow oneself to feel that pain because it will soften us and purify us. That's also from Pema Chodron. Okay? I loved the song this morning, because it's a softening song, right? Softens our heart. There was even a couple lines about that. We do need to soften our hearts. We need to stay woke and we need to soften our hearts. It's a lot to ask, but we are asked to do it. It was people feeling the pain of the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, and others who became a new generation of civil rights activists working for institutional change using the hashtag Black Lives Matter as a rallying cry. It was people feeling that pain and reacting out of it. It was Reverend David Alt, who was here last week, if you remember, who opened his heart to the people in Cambodia when he went on a trip and he asked his tour guide, "Take me to where the neediest people are." And the tour guide took him to Lake Tawny, and there were hundreds of kids who were orphans and other people. And he and his group brought enough food to feed everybody. And of course, he went on to, it was making the Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, which now offers free education to 500 plus students in Cambodia and India year-round. 5 years ago, a member of the Taliban shot Malala Yousafzai in the head for speaking up for girls' rights to an education. The Pakistani teenager miraculously survived, and of course, we all know her as an advocate for girls' rights to an education. And this month, or last month, October 9th, the anniversary of the shooting, Malala attended her first class at the University of Oxford. Here's what she tweeted. 5 years ago, I was shot in an attempt to stop me from speaking out for girls' education. Today, I attend my first lectures at Oxford. All of those stories give me such hope and excitement. And all the feelings, the sadness, the open-heartedness, the cry against injustice. Here's the spiritual principle: a world that works for all. Let's remember that, a world that works for all. In Mahayana Buddhism, bodhisattva is a Sanskrit word for anybody who, motivated by great compassion, has generated bodhicitta, which is a spontaneous wish to attain Buddhahood for everybody. So they want, in unity we say, become the Christ. That's what they say, become the Buddha. So a bodhisattva is somebody who wants everybody to be enlightened. And here's the catch, that this is the thing that seems like I'm not really ready for this part yet. The bodhisattvas, apparently, according to the tradition, they say, well, I'm not going to go to Buddhist heaven until everybody goes. So I'm just going to keep coming back to earth and keep working for enlightenment for everybody. Me, personally, I would take a vacation. That's what a bodhisattva does. In Christianity, you might say the Great Commission is the instruction of, it's a Protestant thing. We didn't learn that so much in Catholicism. But in Protestants, you learn the Great Commission, which is that what Jesus told, to go spread the good news to everybody. Go and give everybody the good news. Don't just keep it to yourself. Let everybody know they can be free. Let everybody know they can be awakened. But we will only succeed if we reject the growing pressure to retreat into cynicism and hopelessness, right? To be cynical and hopeless. We cannot go there. It's tempting. We cannot go there. It is your job to keep yourself going. Yes, it is your job to have an open heart, and it is your job to keep yourself going. And I think that is where New Thought really helps us. New Thought really helps us get that balance between our own spiritual growth and our spiritual unfoldment and the world, right? Like, there is no separation. So I have to be functioning as the Christ. For everybody to be functioning as the Christ, I have to be okay. I have to work on myself to be okay so that I can be available to do what it is in my world to do, so I can stay woke. Our teachings focus on uplifting rather than condemnation. There's so many of them. There is only one presence and one power in the universe. Humanity is divine. Whatever you ask in prayer, believe you have received it and it will be yours. The law of mind action. So many of our unity and our New Thought teachings are about the positive and the transformation. And yet, we are human, and we see injustice, right? We see injustice. Well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do a little exercise with me. This is an experiential thing. See if you can grab one of those pads. If you're in the front row, you have to reach behind you. Get a pad and a writing pen or pencil. And this is one of my favorite spiritual tricks. I'm going to ask you, before you become the Christ, I want you to be really judgy. Can you find your inner judge? For some of us, some of us, our inner judge is always here. I'm going to read this quote again, and I'm going to ask you to be judgy. But we will only succeed if we reject the growing pressure to retreat into cynicism and hopelessness. We have a moral obligation to stay woke, take a stand, and be active, challenging injustices and racism in our communities and fighting hatred and discrimination wherever it rises. By Barbara Lee. So be judgy about that quote. You can be judgy about somebody telling you what to do. You can be judgy about people who you might think are racist. You can be judgy about any of it, any side of it. Just write a sentence that's judgy. Now, I see people are still writing, so that's good. If you have two judgments, go for it. My judgment is it's hard. Right now, that's what my judge says. It's hard. Doesn't say it's too hard, but it says it's hard. So the next step is we're going to turn it around. Because we're unity, we're going to take this, we're going to turn it around and turn it into a positive spiritual experience. We're going to look at how we can take the judgment and become a force for good. So for my judgment, which was, it's hard, what I would do is I want to look at it, I want to focus on myself and see what the truth is. It's hard. Well, first of all, do I really know that it's hard? Do I know that it's hard to challenge injustice and fight hatred? I don't know. If that's my conception. Here's how I find truth in that statement. I'm making it hard for me. I'm making it hard for me. And if anybody, and now I'm going to ask you to be brave and tell me your judgments and or your turnarounds, so that we can learn a little bit from each other, just for about 5 minutes. Anybody have a judgment and or a turnaround? Judy, do you want? Let's see. I should probably come around with the. Good for you. So, okay. Were you able to turn that around to a? Will you? Thanks. Okay. Anybody else have one? Idea? I'll tell you what some of my other judgments are about when I do this statement. I want to say, who could kill someone? Who could kill someone? I feel really angry about violence. Who could kill someone? And I judge them. You are wrong for killing someone. And here's what's just as true. I am holding anger and wrongness in me every time I think about it. I'm recreating it every time I am miserable about it. I am creating just as much violence in my heart and mind when I hold it in my heart and mind, when I condemn it. I'm creating just as much Mavis. It's a really good, juicy one. To survive, I must protect myself. That's awesome. Who hasn't thought that? I mean, who has thought that? I've thought that. Yep. I open my heart and trust the divine. I open my heart and trust the divine will fill the space. Mm-hmm. See, that beautiful daily word, I gratefully surrender to the spiritual certainty that my life is in divine order. That just clicks with me. And when I looked at the daily word today, I just kind of like, oh yeah, keep surrendering, keep surrendering, keep surrendering. We build up armor against these things. It's easier to ignore injustice because it's so painful, right? Because we love people. We're tender, caring, beautiful human beings. It's easier to say, I'm not racist. I'm not killing anybody. I'm not causing any of these problems because it's so painful. I'm not starving any children. I'm not doing any of that. And what I'm telling is that what we can do in unity with our message is we can look at it, transform it, and recognize that by having an open heart, like those 3 examples, think about that. Those 3 examples, those are upsetting examples. People were killed, starving children, hundreds of people without food, and somebody being shot in the head. Those are dramatic examples. We would rather not feel them. So what we want to do is skate on the ice of noticing, judging, and transforming ourselves, using everything in our lives. That's what unity is teaching us, using everything in our lives to transform ourselves into the force for good, into being woke, I know that in this room there are fiery hearts and beautiful people who stand for compassion and love. And I want to say that together with us encouraging each other, that's how we will change the world. That's how we change the world, starting with ourselves, and it goes outward. So everybody here right now, bring your attention to the center of your being, to your heart. Let yourself off the hook for any judgment, for any irritation, for anything that is unlike the Christ, okay, or unlike the Buddha. Just let yourself off the hook. You are doing the best you can. Remember this. Okay? You're not standing alone. Feel all the Buddhas and Christs in the room, just this room alone. Feel all the beams of light. Feel your particular Christ, your particular pure source that is beating inside of you that can never leave, and surrender. I'm asking a lot today. Surrender. Because I don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Spirit in us together. That's how we do it. Let's take an offering for unity.